Aina, and welcome to Voices of Truth One-on-One with Hawaii's Future, brought to you by the Kiwani Foundation. I'm Ehuke Kahu Cardwell, and here we are today on the island of Oahu at Helemanu. And wait until you see who we have on the show today. Let's go on over here and meet him. Peter, aloha.
Aloha.
How are you? Peter Savio. Nice to have you on the show.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, thanks for having us out here. Tell us exactly where we are.
We're actually standing on a new agricultural condominium that I'm developing. It's called Ohana Farms, and you're at the very beginning of it. It's a total of 400 acres.
Wow. So you are a developer, a real estate developer here in Hawaii.
I'm an unusual developer because I'm an affordable housing developer, and I'm a cost-plus developer.
Yes.
So I try not to make a profit, but I try to sell at the lowest possible price.
Yeah, and that's why we wanted to have you on the show today, because you stand apart from all the other developers here in Hawaii, or probably around the world, who want to make a big profit.
Yeah, well, if I break even, I'm happy.
Wow.
I've figured out we've given away $300 to $400 million in profit to our buyers in the form of price reductions.
Wow. So your main interest, correct me if I'm wrong, your main interest is getting people into homes and on land, and in this case, where we are here, into farms, yes?
Correct. That's been my mission.
Wow. How long have you been doing this, Peter?
Well, I've been in real estate since I was 15 years old. That's when I bought my first property. I got my license when I was 20. I'm 75 now. So pretty much all my life I've been selling real estate, and my emphasis has always been the first-time buyer, getting people into ownership, and really trying to make a difference.
Wow, what made you decide to take that path instead of the path of everybody else?
I started off, I was going to be a teacher, and then I realized there's not a lot of money in teaching, and I loved real estate. So I decided I'm going to go into real estate, but I'm going to do it to help people improve their lives, get into ownership. Hawaii's always had a hard time for first-time buyers. So that's the market I went after, the market nobody wants to deal with. A lot of what I'm doing goes back to the 60s. I was a young kid then, really fascinated with real estate. My mother was very prominent at that point in the real estate industry. And Singapore had just become a nation. And they were scouring the earth, scouring the Pacific, the United States, for communities that were solving their housing problem, because Singapore had the same problem we had. They were becoming a new nation, they were poor, and they needed to build housing. They had very bad, inadequate housing. So they came to Hawaii. They met with a group of local developers, attorneys. My mom was there. She dragged me along. Of course, they all knew I was interested in real estate, so they let me sit in the corner. And Singapore was explaining how Hawaii was the leader. Every place they studied, we had met our housing requirements. This would be in the mid to early 60s, and they wanted to know what we did. And at that point, we had come up with a whole new leasehold system for residential. Prior to that, the leasehold was only for ag. There really wasn't a residential leasehold system. We had also passed a condo statute, and we had also started to build with concrete, which at the time was a new concept, and we were building at ocean level with piles, which was Singapore's issue also. So they took everything we did back to Singapore. Fast forward today, 95% owner occupied, one of the wealthiest island nations. All of their people have good jobs. They created industries where their children can stay, get good paying jobs. Hawaii, who was their teacher, lost our way, we crashed and burned. We could be Singapore, and we can still be Singapore.
What would it take to get to where Singapore is, for Hawaii to get to where Singapore is?
It's really not as hard as someone would think. The problem is our government wants to build more and more housing, because the more you build, they believe prices will come down. Well, not in Hawaii. The more you build, the more people come to Hawaii. Local guys, we have as a rule low wages. We cannot compete with the mainland buyer or the foreign buyer. So you have to change the model to where it's not a supply issue, it's a demand issue. As soon as you say it's a demand issue, the solution's completely different. Now you need a regulated market that only local people can buy in, and if they sell, they have to sell at prices locals can afford. What I want to do is tie all price increases to wages. Because if you have a local market with no outside influence, houses sell based on wages. So we did a study in Hawaii, and that means houses should sell for $450,000. They're selling for $1.3 million. So that difference is what the outside buyers, what the demand has done to our market. So we can build all we want to build, prices will not go down. There'll just be more and more people coming. If we have a controlled market, everything the government builds, every concession the government gives for housing will be only for the local market. All of those units will be sold locally. They'll be sold tied to the wages, so everyone should be able to afford. And when they resell based on wages. And you got to realize most people are going to sell it to their son, their daughter, or whatever. But we now have a market that will be separate from our international market. And this market is tied to wages. Local people can buy. The houses will remain affordable forever.
How difficult would it be to transition over or migrate over to that?
As we say in Hawaii, duck soup, which means easy. It's a change in philosophy. It's a change in how you look at the market.
Yeah.
The problem is when you think it's a supply problem, you say, oh, let's subsidize the developer. Let's help reduce the price. Let's give them all this money to build something affordable. So they're spending money, but they're not getting anything in return. In my model, you say, no, it's not a supply issue, it's a demand issue. So let's restrict certain units to local buyers. And if we've got to subsidize them, if we got to pay the same amount of money as we did with a mainland developer, the key is, in the end, who owns it? The local guy. After 30 years, it's free and clear.
Because you paid off your mortgage.
He's paid off the mortgage. If everyone who bought a house in Hawaii is a multimillionaire today, everyone who rented is living paycheck to paycheck. That's our mistake. Our government is hell-bent on building rental housing because they see that as a solution. But they build the rental housing. What they end up doing is subsidizing the developer, subsidizing the rent. The prices go up over 30 years. The building goes from 30 million to 100 million. The developer sells it, takes the money, leaves the state, and we're stuck. It doesn't make sense. We have to own our affordable housing.
Well, the other thing that you said is the money is not staying here. Yeah?
Correct.
And that's a huge difference, right?
It is. Makes a big difference.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Under this model you just described, what would somebody who lived outside of Hawaii be allowed to have absentee ownership here?
No. You'd have to be owner-occupant in this market. You could buy in the international market. So all the present properties would be what I call the international market. All the new properties we're building would be affordable housing, government-sponsored, and have ownership restrictions, sales restrictions. So we would have two markets.
Okay.
One market, a house would be $1 million, and in my market, the same house would be $450,000. Local people are very protective of their families and other locals. I believe this is the solution. It's relatively straightforward, much more complex than I'm explaining, but everything that can be done relatively quickly. All you need is the government to change their position. And they're busy listening to the developers who are building the $1 million units saying it won't work. They're busy listening to the developer who says, I'm going to build the $500 million apartment building if you'll subsidize me. And I say, go ahead and do all of that. The only thing I want to change, who owns it? I want it locally owned. The mainland guy can build it. We'll pay him to build it, but it has to be locally owned, and all the value comes to us local guys.
Wow. So that would completely solve a big issue going on in Hawaii now, which is people, a lot of Hawaiians are leaving Hawaii because they cannot afford to live here.
Yeah, my message to them, come back home. That's our goal, is to bring them all back. There's no reason we don't. The native Hawaiians in particular are being penalized, but that is a separate issue because they use a land lease in Hawaiian homes that's archaic. It's actually like a sharecropper's lease. So they cannot get financing. So they can't get financing, the house has no value.
They can't use the land.
They cannot use the land as value.
Yeah.
If I give them a typical land lease, that lease is worth $300,000-400,000, and then you build a house on it. Hawaiian Homes gives you the land lease for free, but then says you can't use the value. So now the family needs a down payment of 20% to build the house. Then they build the house, live in it for 30 years, and then they want to remodel, but they can only value the house. Well, a 30-year-old house is worth less than you paid. So they get into this problem. All they have to do is modernize their lease. Every native Hawaiian would become a millionaire. They'd have the money to send their kids to school, to invest, to start a business. They have held the Hawaiian community back using Hawaiian homes as one of the vehicles to do it, because it's taking the value from them. It's not allowing them to have the same benefits everyone else had. So everyone else who bought a house in Hawaii back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, multimillionaire today. The Hawaiian, poor. If he owns Hawaiian homes, he's not doing well.
And that's because they can't use the land, the value of the land that the house is sitting on, to be able to go out and finance a loan, right?
It's not even the value of the land, because the mortgage is not on the land. The mortgage would be on the lease, like a Bishop Estate lease.
I see.
Hawaiian Homes has no chance of losing the land. The land would be protected. If there's a default under the mortgage, the lease would be foreclosed on, but it requires it be sold to another native Hawaiian family. Okay, so you're protecting that market. The key is you cannot build thousands and thousands of homes if Hawaiian Homes has to guarantee every single mortgage. They're not using the power the people have to borrow money. They're not giving them the ability to be independent of this system that's been structured.
Okay, so Peter, it sounds to me like that's a third model in Hawaii, yes?
That's one other thing to correct. Like the other ones, like rental housing, etc. Everything we're doing with relation to real estate, as a rule, is wrong, because we're basing it on the wrong assumptions. And unfortunately, we have all these experts that study our market, but they're studying a market that's been distorted for 60 years. And they go, oh no, we checked the last 10 years, this is what your prices are. And I'm saying, no, it's been distorted for 60 years. What should the number be? And that goes back to the definition of a real estate market. Homes built in a community, being sold in a community, which really says homes are tied to wages. So with no outside influence, our market would be $400,000, $450,000 for a typical single family home. The concept is ownership.
Yes.
The concept is, if the government's going to help us, help the local guy, not the developer, not the mainland investor, help the local guy. We spend the same amount of money. Like I say, the only thing I'm changing is who gets the financial benefits. Right now, we give all the financial benefits away. We're giving them to the mainland guys, and us local guys end up paying for it.
Peter, one of the things we haven't talked about yet is the cost of living here in Hawaii, which is, of course, one of the biggies. How does that play into the equation of what we've been discussing here?
I think it's actually part of the solution and part of the problem.
Okay.
We talk about our high cost of housing, but we also have a case where we have a high cost of living, probably one of the highest cost of livings in the country. And when you compare it to our wages, it's really a problem, because we're a service economy, a lot of lower paying jobs. So if you look at what the government has done, and you look at some of the things they've done just over the last 5 years, if they had not done these, if they had corrected them, we could have actually reduced our cost of living by $500 to maybe $4,000 per month, depending on what tax bracket you were in, etc. The example I think I like to use is photovoltaic. Hawaii's big on photovoltaic, and we're doing a really good job of using it to produce our electricity. But again, we designed it so all the financial benefits go to the mainland, and the local guys, we pay, right? So most of our photovoltaic farms are owned by mainland investors. A lot of them are REITs, real estate investment trusts, pay no taxes in the state. If they had done community solar, all of those solar farms would have been owned by local people. All of that money would have stayed. All of that money would have reduced our electric bill. So maybe we've made it cheaper than what it was with fuel, but we haven't made it a lot cheaper. Whereas if they'd kept all that money, it would have worked. I was doing a small solar farm, and the income was going to be $4 million a year. And I was going to sell it to the people in the community so they would benefit. I'm just a small farm. And I look at all of the much larger farms, and they're getting 10 million a year, 20 million a year, 50 million a year. All that money gets shipped out. The sun produces the power. We should have kept all that wealth for ourselves. But again, our government doesn't look at it that way. If they had made it locally owned, all the wealth would have stayed here. The other one is I like to use is apartment buildings. We build apartment buildings. It costs big bucks to build in Hawaii. We give all kinds of concessions. We give them interest-free loans. We give them additional density. We give them all kinds of benefits, tax benefits. They build the building. Then they come back and say, oh, it came out higher, you need to raise the rents. So now we have to pay higher rents for the tenants so they can live in it. All that money goes to the mainland guys. Whereas if we built that same building, we made it locally owned by the tenants, all of that money would have stayed in Hawaii and created wealth in Hawaii. Again, it's this mentality about, they want to have you dependent rather than independent. Okay? So, those are like 3 examples. REITs are another one where we do not tax real estate investment trust. They own almost every major office building. They own almost every major shopping center. They own all the hotels. They own all of our large real estate improvements. They pay absolutely no taxes. No taxes.
Wow.
And the part is when they sell it, they bought it for $50 million. They're going to sell for $300 million, and Hawaii gets 0. So again, it's the things our government has done because they think they're helping, but in reality, they are the problem. They are creating the problem because they're not willing to look at a different model. They're not willing to try something different. Nobody wants change. Well, we've always done it this way. Guys, for 60 years, we haven't been able to provide for our people. That tells me what we're doing is wrong. Doing the same thing for 60 years and expecting a different result is a definition of insanity.
Yes.
That's how I would describe the political parties that run our state. They don't get it. They're missing the obvious solution by going down a different path.
Well, Peter, do you think it's that they don't get it or they don't want to get it?
I really don't think they get it. I think some of them, too often they rely on the party to tell them what to do, what not to do. Our legislative sessions are very short. They're crammed full of bills. People don't have a chance to think. It's almost impossible to testify because you never know when the hearing is. They announce it at the last minute. You can't get there. So it's not designed to get people involved, right? So that's one of the other things we should change, to make our government a full year government where people can get involved and they can give their comments and we can stop and breathe and think about what to do. So the politicians rely on the party. Well, the party behind the screen has certain developers or big contributors. They don't get it. They're doing what they've always done. They're keeping the labor union happy, whatever, but they're hurting the people. The labor unions are beginning to see it because all their members are leaving. We don't have enough people working here anymore. We're going to have to start importing labor. But where are we going to house them?
Yeah.
We can't build houses.
So we come right back to where we started.
That's right. We're going full circle. It's not getting better. It's getting worse. So this year I've been trying to get the legislature to say, let's try something different. So far the Republicans, they're willing to try. They seem much more interested in what I'm talking about. The Democrats, I'd say half of them are listening. The other half are listening, but they listen to the party. They're not voting to indicate they want change. And the reality is, if we don't change, basically Hawaii as we know it, as it was when we grew up, is destroyed. We have to bring our people home. We have to get the Hawaiians into ownership. And I'm talking about every Hawaiian on the waiting list. There's no reason we don't do it. All of these things we can do as a people, as a government, if our government would just open their mind, open their eyes, and try something different. And they're afraid of failure. Well, they've been failing for 60 years. They're willing to accept failure for 60 years. So why not try something different? And if it fails, so what? You failed for 60 years, at least you tried something new.
Peter, one of the things that I've heard in each of the different scenarios we've talked about today is money not staying in Hawaii. Money leaving Hawaii. And it's obviously a huge component of why things are not working here.
Correct.
And so talk a little bit about what it would be like if the money were to stay here.
Okay, think about it. If we owned all the photovoltaic farms and we had to pay no electricity, a family now saves $300-400 a month. That money now takes the pressure off of them. Now they're able to go out to dinner, they're able to buy more things, they create more tax revenue because that money's flowing through the economy, they're living a better life, they're creating jobs because we need jobs wherever they're buying and doing things. So, and that's just electricity. But if you take everything we have, if we get all of these monies to stay here in Hawaii, that's what happened in Singapore. Singapore was like Hawaii, a plantation town, had nothing, had no industry, was a very poor nation. You look at them today, they have the best real estate in the world. They're one of the wealthiest island nations, but they also have a very vibrant economy. They have high-paying jobs. They're into technology, banking. Their children can get jobs that are high-paying jobs, college-educated type jobs. They are the model of what we could have been. We now have to go to our student and duplicate what they did. The problem is our legislature says we need to do the Singapore example. I said, no, what Singapore did worked in Singapore, but you forget they took it from us. They tweaked it and did it a little different. We need to go back to the Hawaii example that was working in the 60s. We have all the tools to do it. We just do not have the political will. The political party is what's holding everything back.
Wow, but it's not too late to start, huh?
Never too late. The people have to understand what's happening. The residents have to understand, because if we don't do something, Hawaii is no longer Hawaii. It's now a wealthy resort destination area for people from around the world, and all us Hawaiians are going to be living on the mainland somewhere.
Well, hasn't it already become that?
There's enough of us left to still win.
Okay.
Most of our communities now are 20-30% mainland and foreign.
Yeah.
Once that gets up to 40-50%, we lose.
Yeah.
We have to start now. We have to bring our people home. The ones to bring home and do immediately is Hawaiian homes, because we can do that right away. The other one is Section 8, is an ownership program. I actually got it changed to an ownership program in '85. So if we would use Section 8, we could be using federal money to build homes and sell it to people, and the government basically is paying for it. But we get them into ownership. Right now, we keep them in rentals, and after 30 years, we got to move them to another rental at a much higher rent. You know, so we just keep on spending the money. They're dependent on it. Let's make them independent.
Yeah,
Let's give them Section 8.
No wonder Section 8 has such a bad name now, because it's this downward spiral that you can't escape from.
Well, you can escape if our government would help the people with the down payment. The problem is nobody in Hawaii has the down payment because we live paycheck to paycheck.
Yes.
So part of the solution is they got to be able to finance down payments, or they got to guarantee 100% financing. But you know, if you can get Section 8 where people can borrow 80-90% to buy a house, and we only have to finance 10% or 5%, for us, that's the easiest way to start taking the bottom of our market and putting them into housing. A lot of our Section 8 may be Native Hawaiians. We should put them into Hawaiian homes. That's what is supposed to happen. Again, the solution is there. There's 20, 30, 40, 50 things we can do, and we're doing none of them. None of them, because we've always done it this way.
Wow.
You don't rock the boat.
Wow.
And you can't, we're gonna lose.
What would you say to somebody who's watching us right now, who's going, this is what we need, this is what we need? You know, maybe it's a Hawaiian who lives in Las Vegas right now. Maybe it's a Hawaiian who lives here on Oahu, and they're having trouble every month, every year, feeding their family, making ends meet.
Yeah. The problem here in Hawaii, we're all very polite. We all live on an island. We all try to talk it out and work it out. Unfortunately, the politicians take that as approval. I think what we have to start doing, especially those who have left the island, to write letters to the legislature and say, guys, you need to change. You need to do something different. Stay in touch with what's happening, because our goal should be to bring all of our people home. That's what's going to save us, is bringing them home, putting them into home ownership, keeping our culture alive, keeping the Hawaiian culture alive. Right now, we're losing it, absolutely losing it, and we're not going to be able to survive if we don't do something in the next 10 to 15 years. So there is a timeline on what we're doing. And the key is to get involved and don't accept, oh, it can't be done. Oh, the famous statement down here is, oh, it's unconstitutional. It's unconstitutional. Because as soon as you say that, people go, oh, okay, fine. No, almost everything I'm talking about has done before, is being done, and is constitutional. I know on my idea for mass transit, I had said tax the people. And the government's response was, it's illegal. So I called the constitutional scholar at the university, and he says, Peter, it is illegal. And I said, what? He says, yeah, you used the word tax. You should have said impact fee. Impact fee is legal. So the government would sit there and tell you it's unconstitutional, but they wouldn't tell you, oh, change one word and it works, because they don't want to correct the problem. They don't want change because they have power, they have wealth, they have stability. They're happy. The rest of us are miserable.
Wow, that's amazing, and that's where we have to leave it today. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
For spending the time with us to explain all this stuff. For me, and I'm sure for a lot of viewers, a lot of mysteries in this half hour have been solved. And it's like, wait, why are we doing this?
That's it.
This is crazy. This is nuts.
Yep.
Wow. So thank you to you, Peter, and thank you to our viewers for joining Peter and me here. Remember, you can watch us on the web 24/7 on voicesoftruthtv.com, and you can like Voices of Truth on Facebook. I'm Ehukekahu Cardwell for the Kiwane Foundation, along with Peter Savio here. And until next time, ahui ho!
Free Hawaii Broadcasting Network.